With the 2024 hurricane season in full force, storms are intensifying and the worst may be yet to come. Hurricane Helene has already caused widespread destruction, devastating communities along the Gulf Coast with record-breaking winds and storm surges. Now, the National Hurricane Center is warning that even more powerful storms are forming in the Atlantic, potentially surpassing Helene in severity. Today, we're taking a closer look into these upcoming threats and how they might impact vulnerable areas already reeling from recent storms. Hurricane Helene's devastation. Hurricane Helene tore through the Gulf Coast with a force that few were prepared for. The storm made landfall as a powerful Category 4 hurricane, bringing winds exceeding 140 miles per hour and a relentless storm surge that overwhelmed coastal defenses. Entire neighborhoods were submerged as rivers overflowed and protective barriers failed to hold. In cities like New Orleans and Gulfport, Helene's wrath was felt particularly hard, with thousands of homes damaged or destroyed. Emergency responders were pushed to their limits, rescuing residents trapped in their homes or stranded by rising floodwaters. The destruction Helene left behind wasn't just physical, it was deeply economic as well. Small businesses, already struggling in a fragile economy, faced crippling losses, with many unable to reopen after the storm. Power outages affected millions, leaving some areas without electricity for days. Communities along the coast are now facing an uphill battle to rebuild, with estimated damages reaching into the billions. The agricultural sector has also been hit hard, as fields of crops were washed away, threatening food supply chains and leaving farmers devastated. Beyond the immediate economic impact, the environmental damage from Helene could be felt for years to come. The storm surge eroded beaches and wetlands, which act as natural barriers against future storms. Coastal ecosystems, already vulnerable due to climate change, have been further stressed by the influx of saltwater and pollutants washed inland. For many, the emotional toll of the storm has been just as severe as the physical damage, as families cope with the loss of homes and livelihoods, and communities band together to navigate the long road to recovery. New storms on the horizon. As the Atlantic hurricane season intensifies, forecasters are tracking a series of new storms, one of which is Tropical Storm Kirk. Forming in the eastern Atlantic, Kirk is expected to grow into a powerful hurricane by the end of the week. With sustained winds currently reaching 60 miles per hour, the National Hurricane Center predicts that Kirk will become a Category 3 hurricane by Thursday. Although Kirk poses no immediate threat to land, its massive swells are expected to reach the U.S. coastline, creating hazardous conditions along beaches. Meteorologists are closely monitoring this storm, which continues to strengthen as it moves through warm waters. The conditions that helped fuel Hurricane Helene, such as high sea surface temperatures, are also driving Kirk's rapid intensification. Other systems in the Atlantic show similar potential to develop into major hurricanes, signaling a continuation of the dangerous pattern that has already left parts of the Gulf Coast and Caribbean devastated. Communities across the U.S. are being urged to remain vigilant, as the upcoming storms, including Kirk, could bring further destruction. Even though Kirk may not directly strike land, the unpredictable nature of these weather systems means that paths can shift quickly, putting coastal regions at risk. In many areas still recovering from Hurricane Helene, preparations are underway in case evacuation orders become necessary. These new storms, with Kirk leading the charge, could easily surpass the strength of Helene, adding to the already considerable strain on emergency services and disaster relief efforts. Comparing Helene and future storms. Hurricane Helene was devastating in its own right, but what set it apart were the unusual conditions that made its impact so severe. Helene's path was erratic, catching many off guard as it shifted direction and intensified rapidly before making landfall. The storm's size and duration also contributed to the widespread damage. Helene lingered over coastal areas for longer than expected, unleashing prolonged rain, flooding, and high winds. This prolonged exposure is what caused so much devastation, as it allowed the storm surge to push farther inland and rivers to overflow. However, the upcoming storms could potentially eclipse Helene in both size and intensity. Forecasts from the National Hurricane Center suggest that these new systems could grow larger and more powerful than Helene, with wind speeds exceeding those recorded during Helene's peak. Some experts have pointed out that the storms forming now have more favorable conditions for intensification, with ocean temperatures remaining unusually warm and atmospheric patterns aligning to sustain their strength. The rapid intensification of storms has become more common in recent years, a troubling trend that could see these new hurricanes causing even more damage than Helene did. Another key difference is that while Helene primarily impacted the Gulf Coast, these new storms are expected to take more unpredictable paths, potentially affecting a wider range of regions. Areas that were spared by Helene may not be as fortunate in the coming weeks. While Helene's destruction was limited to a relatively focused area, the storms now being tracked have the potential to bring damage to both the Gulf and East Coasts, as well as to parts of the Caribbean. The threat of these new storms surpassing Helene in both scale and impact has led to growing concerns among officials and residents alike. Preparation and response by authorities. As new storms develop, authorities at both the local and national levels are working around the clock to prepare for the potential devastation. The National Hurricane Center has been issuing regular updates, providing early warnings about the strength and trajectory of these storms. Their advanced satellite systems and predictive models have allowed for more accurate forecasts, giving communities crucial time to prepare. With the possibility of storms more severe than Helene, these warnings have not gone unnoticed, and local governments are taking proactive measures to mitigate damage and ensure public safety. Emergency services are mobilizing in regions expected to be in the storm's path. Evacuation orders are being drafted for coastal areas that could face the brunt of these hurricanes, and shelters are being set up to accommodate displaced residents. In places already devastated by Helene, the recovery efforts are being adjusted to focus on immediate resilience measures, such as reinforcing levees, repairing flood walls, and clearing debris that could exacerbate flooding. Officials in these areas are urging residents not to underestimate the severity of the approaching storms and to take the necessary precautions, whether that means stocking up on supplies or preparing to evacuate. In addition to local efforts, the federal government is coordinating with state and municipal agencies to provide disaster relief and deploy resources where they will be most needed. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has pre-positioned supplies and emergency personnel in regions most likely to be affected, ensuring a quicker response in the aftermath of any destruction. International aid organizations are also standing by, ready to assist in the recovery process, especially if these storms cause the widespread damage that is currently feared. The coordination between these entities is critical, as the storms on the horizon could overwhelm local resources without proper planning and support. Long-term implications of the 2024 hurricane season. The 2024 hurricane season is shaping up to be one of the most destructive in recent memory, and the long-term effects will likely reverberate for years to come. As climate change continues to warm ocean temperatures, scientists are warning that hurricanes like Helene and Kirk could become the new norm. The increased frequency and intensity of storms put vulnerable coastal communities at greater risk, with each hurricane season bringing the threat of higher storm surges and stronger winds. These conditions are forcing local governments to rethink how they prepare for and respond to future hurricanes. Beyond the immediate devastation, the ongoing barrage of storms is likely to have lasting economic consequences. Coastal areas heavily reliant on tourism may find it difficult to recover from back-to-back hurricane seasons, as rebuilding efforts take longer and cost more. Additionally, the strain on insurance systems and disaster relief funds is growing. With each storm, these resources are stretched thinner, leaving fewer funds available for rebuilding and recovery. This could lead to longer-lasting economic hardships in affected regions, especially for low-income communities with limited access to aid. The environmental impact is another significant concern. Hurricanes like Helene and Kirk disrupt natural habitats, eroding beaches and wetlands that serve as natural buffers against future storms. These ecosystems are essential for protecting inland areas from storm surges and flooding, but with each passing hurricane, they become more fragile. Scientists are urging immediate action to protect these coastal environments, as their degradation only increases the risk of more severe damage in future storms. The 2024 season has made it clear that long-term strategies must be developed to adapt to the growing intensity of hurricanes and mitigate their impacts on both the environment and society. The role of advanced technology in storm tracking. The ability to predict and track hurricanes has dramatically improved over the past few decades, thanks in large part to advances in technology. The National Hurricane Center now relies on cutting-edge satellite systems, high-resolution radar, and powerful supercomputers to model storm behavior with increasing accuracy. These tools allow meteorologists to predict not only the path of a storm, but also its potential for intensification. With systems like Tropical Storm Kirk, these technologies are crucial in providing early warnings to at-risk communities, allowing for better preparation and response. Satellites orbiting the Earth provide constant real-time data on developing storms, capturing key information such as cloud formation, wind speeds, and ocean temperatures. This data is fed into complex computer models which simulate the storm's movement and its potential to grow in intensity. These simulations, coupled with drone flights through the storms themselves, give meteorologists a detailed understanding of how hurricanes evolve over time. This advanced modeling has been instrumental in identifying storms like Kirk early in their development, providing critical lead time for issuing warnings. Additionally, improvements in communication technology have made it easier to disseminate these warnings. Alerts from the National Hurricane Center can now be broadcast directly to smartphones, ensuring that people in vulnerable areas receive timely updates. Social media platforms and emergency alert systems have become key channels for distributing information quickly and efficiently, helping to save lives when evacuation orders are issued. As technology continues to evolve, it will play an even larger role in hurricane prediction, ultimately helping communities better withstand the increasing frequency and intensity of storms like Helene and Kirk. Now it's time to hear from you. Are you more worried than ever about hurricanes and tropical storms? Let us know in the comments section below.